We are so delighted to open the third hour of America First today with none other than the executive director of Heritage Action, the action arm of the Heritage Foundation, Jessica Anderson. Welcome back to America First.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
Can I do something a little bit different with you?
Please.
So I was on the phone with somebody, super good guy, amazing guy, believes in MAGA, very successful businessman in New York, and he is raising a lot of money for the Republicans to win in the races in Georgia that have yet to be decided. And he did that because he just wants to help. But then he asked me, because, you know, I'm in the swamp and he thinks I know, he says, So how important is Georgia? Jessica Anderson, can you answer that question?
Georgia's two runoff races in the Senate are the singular most important thing going on right now for the future of our Senate majorities for the next decade. And, you know, I cannot underscore how important this is. While legal voters in Georgia will determine the outcome of these two races, the results are going to have profound impact for really the next decade when we look at everything that the extreme liberal left wants to do and wants to use the Senate to do it.
So let's start here. What happens if the Democrats win the two runoff races in Georgia, Jessica?
Then the shift of power from the Republican majority to a Democrat majority led by Chuck Schumer happens overnight.
And what is the agenda? What is the agenda? If the Democrats hold the upper house, realistically speaking, what does that mean for the American people and for the American way of life?
It means that the Green New Deal is a reality. It means that they could go forward to try to rig the Senate, change the rules of the filibuster, and then add more justices to the Supreme Court, which will have a direct impact on all of our religious liberties, First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, Second Amendment rights, everything that we have come to know and hold dear, and the safeguards of the Supreme Court will be gone. It's all legislating from the bench at that point if they're able to add more justices. And then you've got policy items like Medicare for all, huge increases in taxes, let alone the social issues that are at stake here when you look at their extreme embrace of abortion and infanticide, all the way to the support for the defund the police movement. Remember, the balance of power and the potential shift in the Senate is dynamic, but it matters not just for the Senate. We've got a Democrat majority in the House. So now you've got Pelosi leading the House, Chuck Schumer leading the Senate, and we don't yet know who will be in the White House. And so while two things are happening at once in Georgia, you have the recount on the president's election and his reelection, and all of that's going on with the lawsuits and the litigation in the state, with the Secretary of the State and the governor involved. All of that is happening with a split screen of these two runoffs that are vitally important to the balance of power and the real-life implications of all of this policy that is at stake with who runs the majority.
And I have to ask you the question. We're talking to Jessica Anderson of Heritage Action. Follow her right now, Jess Anderson 2 on Twitter. Every day, people text me, DM me, send emails saying, what can I do? What can the average American do about the Georgia race? Do we just sit back and watch? And how much of a danger is fraud once again?
Well, please don't sit back and watch. Whether you're in Georgia or outside of Georgia, we have a role for you at Heritage Action. You can go to heritageaction.com right now and let us know you're willing to help. We need people that can send text messages. We need people that will do phone calls to swing voters, to Trump voters, to GOP voters, everyone that's in Georgia that we need to show up. And if you're in Georgia itself, every Saturday we meet in the morning outside of Atlanta, and we launch a canvas of door knocks throughout the entire weekend. So if you can't take off work, come on the weekend, or if you're not working right now and want a few extra dollars, we'll actually be able to pay you to help us go door to door and talk to voters during the week. So phone calls, text message, and door knocks are a critical part of the ground game that everyone can do, whether you're in Georgia or outside of Georgia, to help. Because we know that the ground game is really what's going to move these runoffs. If we don't put these choices in front of these voters in Georgia, they will stay home. Runoffs are tough because people are tired.
Yes.
And then you add in COVID and you add in the holidays and you add in Georgia's college football season. And we just know that it's going to take every ounce that we can to get voters to show up before January 5th for this special election.
So, guys, even if you don't live in Georgia, you can make a difference making phone calls. Go to heritageaction.com. That's heritageaction.com. We've got to save the Senate, and Georgia is the final stand. What about these reports we're hearing? Even, columnists for the New York Times on television shows, in podcasts, are saying that Democrats should commit felonies. They should move temporarily to Georgia so they can vote, so they can steal this election. What is, do we have what it takes to stop Georgia being stolen from the rightful winners?
So there's two ways to stop fraud. The first is you have to stop it before it happens, which means we need nonpartisan eyes and ears within the rooms following the chain of custody of ballots,
yes.
Period. We have to have our eyes and ears in the room. And when we're locked out of the room, there's no way we can spot it before it's actually happened. And so once the counts have been made, then it becomes a question of recounting, and that opens up the door for even more fraud and misinterpretation and just, sheer lapses of judgment from people at times. So the best way to stop fraud is to prevent it from happening in the first place. That's what we can do now, which is why poll workers are so vitally important for this Georgia runoff. So if you were thinking about getting involved and you're in Georgia and you have the time and the commitment and you can be a poll worker, do it. You need to register with the state now. You need to get trained by your local precinct now, and you can be in charge of and really have chain of custody to the ballot and be in the room to ensure no funny business happens. So that's one, and that's what we can do right now for these runoffs. The second answer, though, is much bigger than that, which is how do we make sure that states are actually ready, that they're actually ready for upcoming elections? I think what we've learned after November 3rd is so many states are actually not prepared. They've got endless election seasons. They have loose laws on the books for when you stamp a ballot, how many signatures are needed, is there an outside envelope, an inside envelope? This is crazy talk when you look at an election season and on election day. So we've got to have pressure from the grassroots to state legislators and governors to tighten up their state laws around the election, because the reality is that some of these changes have to happen at the state level, and they have to happen now to create a way that we can have trust in our system for 22, for 2024. But again, that doesn't get at the problem right now, which is why we need poll workers in place for this runoff.
It's so crucial, and I think this is why the Democrats were capable of doing so much fraud in the general election a few weeks ago, because we simply didn't have enough eyes and ears in the building. My wife was a poll worker for the general election here in the Commonwealth. Reassure us that although it's in January, there is enough time to volunteer and get trained. Correct, Jessica?
There is enough time, but this is the last week. So you have to be in place. If you're in Georgia and you're able to be a poll worker, you have to be in place before December 15th when early voting begins.
Wow.
So the time to register and get trained is right now. We can help you do it. We're committed to putting at least 100 poll workers in the 5 most important counties in Georgia around the Atlanta area. We'll help you connect with the right people on the ground, get your training, and get in there so we've got the eyes and ears in the right place, ensuring this fraud does not happen.
They're doing great work. Please check them out. Volunteer today, heritageaction.com. We've been talking to their executive director, Jessica Anderson. Follow her as well, Jess Anderson, too. It is the final battle. The president, his legal team will fight all the way to the Supreme Court when it comes to the presidential election. But when it comes to the Senate, it's Georgia, Georgia, Georgia. And wherever you live, you can make a difference. Become part of the solution. Catch them when they're trying to cheat. Make it so it's harder for them to cheat. heritageaction.com. I'm Sebastian Gorka. Let's go back to your calls here on America First. Sharon, Ron, Kevin, John. Don't go anywhere. Back after these messages.